I will start my talk. No, stream. Okay, good. We'll wait 1 minute. All right.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do a quick talk about getting started with game creation in libGDX. It's gonna be very like
Okay, good.
we'll wait 1 minute. Intro level stuff, not like anything hardcore. It's gonna be about libGDX, which is a framework for writing. No music. Okay, good. Framework for writing app games in Java, and it's quite cross-platform, so it's nice to use for that. Let's see, goes right to the setup tool. Yep. You just download the jar application, which you get from their webpage, which I haven't put up here, but it should be libGDX. Just first hit on Google and you'll find it. It looks like this, and it's quite nice. They've improved it a lot since before. Now you can just like tick off these checkboxes for the different extensions you want, and it's quite easy to use. Let's see, you can use any IDE you want, or at least those three. And I use Eclipse myself, and that's probably what I'll be like demoing quite quickly at the end, just to like show how to set it up. And they use Gradle for building, so when you set it up, you have to make sure that you have the Gradle plugin installed for whatever IDE. All right, really quickly going to, that doesn't look very good, but it's supposed to be a picture of the lifecycle, which looks a lot, it's basically just an Android application lifecycle, for those of you who have seen those. Yeah, that's more visible, I guess. And basically, your game loop just goes in the render loop, and that's all we really have to think about when creating quick games, or if you want to get started.
By that you mean that in the render loop that the game progresses?
Yeah, exactly. So the render loops runs once to draw every frame. If you want to get the delta time, there's a function you call, and it gives you the DT. So if you want to use that for like movement and stuff, that's I'll show it at the end. Actually, I have the code for it. Also, to like very quickly use it, it's also created when you start a project. This will be basically created for you, but all you have to do is implement the application listener or extend the application adapter. They're both the same. This one and this one. Basically, this one it's like a what's it called? Class that already implements this, but it's just got empty methods, and you override them, and then you fill them in as you need them. So I like using this one. I think this one's also default, like created for you. But yep. Basically, again, these are the methods from the diagram before. The lifecycle methods, these ones. Like, for example, render here is just this render there. And you write your code in there, basically, and that'll be your game loop. Also, your setup will then go and create, which is run once at the beginning of your application lifetime. Whoops. Quickly going to geometry and shapes, because that's interesting to draw. To make games at least. Basically, you have this thing called shape render, which draws shapes for you, and it's very simple. You just new shape render like any other thing, and you can import it in your automatically in Eclipse anyways. To draw, you just put it inside SR, which is the shape render begin, and you can draw different shapes. If you just write like SR.draw, I think it'll like autofill with different shapes and stuff and colors. It's quite easy to do. An example code actually. So here I have specifically drawn, for example, a rectangle and a circle, and basically just takes coordinates and the radius for the circle, height and width for rectangle, and color up here. So it's really simple to use. Hopefully it's straightforward. Sprites, which is also another thing that's highly requested, works almost the same way basically, but this time you use a sprite patch instead. And the sprite patch is what you draw to, and it's the same thing as before. Begin and end, and everything in between is what you draw. Also, here's a really quick like diagram of how all the different it might be a bit confusing that there's like textures, sprites, texture regions, and sprite patch, but basically they all kind of like build upon one another. Or texture is just an image, which is usually is not what you want, because you might not you might have a sprite sheet, for example, which is a big image, and different like parts of it is what you want to draw at a single time. So then you'd want to use a texture region, which just identifies a region inside your texture and draws that instead at a given coordinate. And also sprites is another you could say wrapper for the texture region, which basically lets you do rotation, scaling, translation, and tint and stuff like that on top of the texture region, and draws it to screen at some point. Move the mouse cursor. There we go. Again, an example. Also, these examples are copy-pastable, and they should work. They worked before, and I tested a little bit, but not all of it. But again, it should be fairly straightforward, and if you have questions, you can ask me. I'll be here. So again, here we have texture and sprite patch as before. Basically, you'll just use sprite patch for most of the things, at least for sprites and for drawings or textures. So creates new, and here we go. Let's see what happens here. I guess I can demo some of these as well. I'll probably have lots of time because basically draws at the mouse location, and it's not that hard to use. Text again. This got a lot easier. Now we don't have to get the nightly build and do some hackish thing yourself to set it up. Now it's in the beginning, you just tick off the free type box when you create your project. I can show that again, actually. I don't know if that makes sense. This one. Hopefully it's visible to the stream as well. Anyways, if you tick that off, you can then use TTF fonts to generate any kind of font you want at any size, or any bitmap font at any size you want, and draw that to the screen. Let's see. Yep. So if you just use the default font like this is an example using the default font, you'll get 15-point Arial, and if you change its size or scale it, it's going to look really bad really quickly. So what you do want to do is to generate the font using free type font generator, which takes in a TTF font, which you can get from openfont.org or something. And you just, load it in. You put it in the assets folder of your project. And let's see, for example, I've here used Bleeding Cowboys and I put it in the assets fonts Bleeding Cowboys TTF. You load it in with free type font generator, and in the constructor you put the file handle, and also you set parameter size. In this case, I want to generate a font that's 44 pixels wide per character, and I can now use this font as any other font like the one before, except this one's going to be 44 pixels per character and look a lot nicer at that size. And you just draw draw batch hello world 10, or the coordinates of the text. Again, I guess I'll show an example because that would make more sense, or visual sense anyways. Input. Oh yeah, inputs. If you want to use controllers, you probably want input for your game, mouse, keyboard, or controller. These are all possible. And again, a quick note on inputs. It might seem tempting to use polling by using the is key pressed and check for yourself, but I recommend using event handling because it's more of a higher level thing, I feel. Instead of doing stuff yourself, you have others tell you that buttons are being pressed, and I don't know. It's a lot easier to put your code you want to run when the button is being pressed in a separate function, and that just happens whenever you press the button, instead of having to check, and it makes a lot more sense. And also, you might miss button presses if you don't poll often enough, and that's not good. So hopefully with event handling, you'll never miss an event that actually is pressed. And missing keys is really nasty when you're I don't know, playing any game, I guess. Okay, so quick example here too. Also copy pastable basically. you just implement input processor, and you set the input processor after having created it, which is GDX input set input processor. So it's all relatively straightforward. You just have to make sure that this is the processor you created, and should all be good. Again, here's like a key down, there's a key up, there's also a mouse. No, there's a touch event, because again, this API like is supposed to work for multiple platforms. So it's you might have to think, especially for input, if you can't use mouse dragged if you want your application to run on, say, a tablet, because it doesn't have a mouse dragged, it just has like touch events, and you basically have to think. Well, you should normally test with the tablet as well anyways, so hopefully that's not a problem. But anyways, yep, gamepad is also quite simple and possible. Controller listener works basically the same way, and again, you can also, for most of these listeners, you can also get an adapter that you extend, which is just going to implement the listener anyways. Again, and these are some experimental button codes that worked for my Xbox controller. Again, your mileage may vary, but it's also quite simple to like trial and error by swapping the numbers and see what works. But that might be a step you have to do as well to get your controller to work properly. And sound and music, again, one more thing you'd want in a game. Again, so there's two different like ways to play sound, and basically one is for short sound clips that are played a lot or quite quickly and perhaps interleave quite a lot or on top of each other, and you want to use sound for that, and music for longer files that you stream from the disk. So yeah, just keep that in mind, like for background music and stuff, you'd want to use music, and it takes WAV, OGG, and MP3, at least back then. I don't know, maybe it's more now. So yeah, libGDX has probably evolved. Documentation API, I definitely recommend the wiki, because that one's amazing and it has everything. Almost like all my stuff was taken there from there basically. So do go there, and also like just Googling basically should cover most of your stuff. And also ask me, I'll be here. At least try to help as best as I can. Also possibly, yeah, here's the delta time thing that I mentioned earlier. If you want, like, you probably want delta time in your game to move stuff like smoothly across, independent of frames being drawn. So then they'll move the respective distance as yeah, the time in between the frames has passed, if that makes any sense. Also, you might want to think about like dead zones for analog input and stuff. And also texture packer. Oh yeah, I have a quick slide about that from like way back. It has like a nice texture packer as well if you want to like do stuff on limited memory or portable devices basically. Like phones would really, it makes a big deal to try to have as few textures as possible and to draw mostly from a single texture at a time. It goes faster, and basically it produces like an atlas file for you can see here with coordinates and all that, and you can just really simple to use that way. Yeah, I think that's most of it actually. I'll just show like a quick demo-ish thing with the Eclipse project. If I have it. Oh wait, I closed it, never mind. I'm gonna put the mic down for a second. Alright, so basically when you import it, you'll get like presumably more projects than I have, because I only chose the desktop project. But you'll always get this core project, which is where most of your like the base of your like main code base will go here for your game, which controls like for example, the test game.java is like the first one, the default file that it creates for you, and this is just where like you see the render loop and everything there. And But if you want to run your game, you have to run the desktop project, because that one has a launcher for your desktop in it. And all that's in the desktop project really is just this quite simple launcher. It uses lightweight Java game library launcher or something, and it launches the game from the other project, basically. What I do is I set Eclipse to always launch the last project that I launched, so I can write code in here and I can launch my game without having to switch to the other project, which can be like a bit cumbersome, but it works. Anyways, again, I can run the code, I guess. Basically, that's what it'll look when you load your first project, except for the Bleeding Cowboys font, which I showed in the code earlier. And yeah, it's relatively simple to use. Although I would recommend it if you're going to write for different devices at the same time, or you want your code to perhaps in the future be run on tablets. It's like quite easy to set up now. It used to be harder, but now I'd actually say you could use this. should use this. Again, the next talk will be about like easier, quicker, more like prototypal type languages to use, like Love 2D and processing. Again, I would use this again if you already know Java, and you might think the game will like go beyond just I don't know, a quick test. If you want to expand on it further and you want it to run on tablets and stuff, then this is pretty neat. Beyond that, I'm done with my talk.
All right, thanks everybody. The next talk will be in 30 minutes. Oh, and it will be on Love 2D, quick prototyping framework for games that you program using Lua.